in saying, they can't get to you. So we cannot worry about it. We've made it. We're all trying for at the right time from the right places. So we got there. No problem.
All right. Well, let's get things started. So welcome everybody to this HMGS Cyber Wars session. Big welcome to Simon Hall from the Plastic Soldier Company. And,
hello, pleased to meet you. Nice to be back.
Yeah, and so you're the chairman of the company.
Yeah, I'm working with Will now quite a bit, doing even more on miniatures. They've got me so excited. They've drawn me back into the miniatures world even more than I already was. So there we go. Can't help myself. It's good fun.
Yeah, well, we are delighted that you could be here, and through the course of the session, everyone that is connected, at least through the Zoom session, we are monitoring for questions, so by all means, feel free to go ahead and type, but otherwise, we do ask that you stay on mute and keep your video off. So with that, Simon, take it away.
Oh, where would you like to start? Shall we, there's a lot happening, actually. We've been incredibly busy at PSC. You've probably noticed quite a lot of stuff coming out recently.
Spoilers.
You want to start with spoilers?
Spoilers.
Oh, spoilers! Things coming out. Well, okay. Well, when I signed up to do the Meg stuff, there was part of my deal with it that said we're always going to do a Simon Christmas special every year. So here you go. So there's spoiler number one. So the Simon Christmas special is going to be coming out. So for people who like Ancients and Hannibal, there's a 50mm ultracast Carthaginian army coming out for Christmas with a special Christmas booster. So it's a box set as normal, but it's got 2 free elephants thrown into the box set for Christmas. So we've got a limited edition set of those. So those will be out for Christmas. We've the ultracast stuff actually is really matured. I don't know how many people have got the more recent ones, but the new tech it's quite an interesting story actually, coming to that and seeing it develop, because it's taken a little while, like a lot of new tech, to totally get the hang of it, because it isn't anything that's been done before. Actually, it comes from a plasticky resin. I'm not quite sure what we describe, but we don't actually know exactly what it is. It comes from Spain, and we get the product from Spain, and the technology comes from Barcelona, and I think it was originally created for medical purposes, and then we pinched it to do this. And I think we've now, as a team, they've really got the hang of how to do the production of the figures. So the latest ones that came out, the 100 Years War English, are spectacular, and they've managed to get all of the figures looking really crisp. So now we've got coming thick and fast early next year. We've got a whole range of 10mm World War II coming out in ultracast. So that's the really big thing, which is coming out to support the set of rules I'm doing for World War II, using the triple C colour system. We can talk a little bit more about later. So that's the Divisions of Stool set of rules that we've got coming out. So by then we'll have a battle group which sits nicely with its 1:1 figure scale for infantry, perfect for 20mm plate with 15mm or slightly bigger. Division steel is sort of 2 companies aside and attachments upwards, and perfect for 15mm, 10mm foot plate with 20. That's a little overlap zone, so 15 is probably the overlap going down. So we got all of those coming out. We've just launched some 20mm World War II. The Panzer Grenadiers have just come out. We will have Afrika Korps and 8th Army coming out fairly soon off the back of that. There's some other new bits of Northag kit coming out a little bit later in the year. I'd have to check exactly which ones they are. I was relying on Will to remind me of those, but I could have a little dig and check the list and see what they are. So there's a little bit more coming out on that. And then you've got a huge amount to talk about with Warwick and Piers coming up, because we've sorted out a 2-year and a 10-year plan for Battle Group, for all the Battle Group players. It will really allow that to develop over the next 10 years, and also to take Northag forward to allow people to play with new armies and new areas such as Central Europe and all the other main enemies of the Warsaw Pact, and also to move it onwards in due course to things like the Arab-Israeli wars, which I have to admit I'm rather looking forward to. That's my favourite bit of modern warfare, if I'm honest. So you've got all that to come as well, and then there's a continuous stream of ancient figures and ancient armies coming out for Mortem et Gloriam over the first 3 months of next year as well, which we've got planned. Which I don't think I'll launch the spoiler out, because that's too many spoilers, isn't it? Surely that's enough spoilers for now, is it?
That's a long list, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've got busy. I mean, essentially what's happened now, the team has expanded a bit, and we've got much more capability of doing molds really quickly and doing them right. It's a skill. It's a bit of a black art. It's taken a while to get the hang of it, but they've cracked it now.
Yeah.
So we can knock stuff out much faster now. So we've got a really, really long list of development stuff that's going to be going through And through the course of next year, we're going to build a big World War II range and cover all the main forces, probably in the course of 12 months, actually. And work those all the way through. So it's pretty exciting stuff, actually. And we also have, after the Divisions of Steel, we've got the Men of Steel rules that will come out, which is a skirmish game, which will use a 20mm 1-to-1 skirmish game, 20mm 28mm, also using the color systems that I've developed. And also in 2021, which is going to be timed to coincide with our first ever PSC, The Gathering. I don't know if you've seen the news on that, London Grand Tournament. It's going to be our annual host, have a big gathering of PSC players. So we're going to host things like the Meg World Championship there, but also just have a social gathering for people who want to play for fun and meet other players of rule sets and have a big fun event. We're going to time the launch of the fantasy supplement, so Fantasy Battle, which is Mortime Dracones, which is so that's going to, that'll be hitting the decks around then as well. So we've got a big year ahead, exciting year ahead.
Yeah. So what do you guys have a date more or less picked for when you're going to do the big get together?
Yeah, it's in September next year. So it was being kicked around for earlier, but all this COVID stuff has made life very nervous for organisers. Obviously, you know that better than anybody.
Yeah.
So they've been sensibly cautious, I think, and Zachary is running that one, has organised it for September 24th to 26th, I think it is from memory. It was a fantastic event 2 years ago. It originated as a 40K type of event, had a lot of players. It's held in a fantastic sports stadium in North London from the Olympics back in 2012, so it's a fantastic venue. And I think they had about 350 people there last time, and we had a Meg tournament there last time with about 50 players, and the players loved it, thought it was fantastic. So yeah, hoping we get 150 PSC fans over there, and we'll just have a great time for the weekend, put on some demo games, some bring and play games, launch a few new bits, and have lots of people playing either fun games or playing in the competitive stuff like the World Championship. Should be a hoot.
Hey, Tom, are you busy next September?
I was just thinking about this in my mind because
Send us an invite. We'll go.
I'm funny. I actually have plans that I will be in Europe at that time, so I could actually swing this one.
You should you look it up. Yeah, I'll send the link out shortly. After we finish, I'll drop you the link over. It looks fantastic. So yeah, you should. We're coming to Historicon. You should come to that.
It's only fair.
It's only fair. I think it has to be done, don't you? Yeah. It should be good. And there's all sorts of stuff we're gonna put on there. I mean, it's including just some fun stuff because I think the public allowed access, so they'll wander around. So I've designed a little set of fast-moving 1-to-1 World War II skirmish rules, digging out my old 54mm Airfix figures.
Oh my!
That'd be a hoot.
Yeah.
It plays very quick. So you just come and take control of a squad, 10 figures in a squad, and play that out using box standard 6-sided dice and a bit of fun on the tabletop. It'd be great to get some kids playing that, just rolling some dice and moving my old big 54mm German infantry around. It's quite fun. That's as though they look. Yay! Look at those.
Yeah. So one question we got from the audience, since we've been talking a lot about figures and in Ultracast in particular, and they're wondering, are you planning on replacing the existing 20mm hard plastic line with Ultracast?
No, I mean, having developed them all and got them all, we'll keep all of the current hard plastic running, and we'll continue to embellish it a bit. I mean, there's no question we'll embellish it a bit.
Okay.
So we have some 50mm Japanese being built at the moment for hard plastic that we will do to supplement the Pacific range. But we will do probably more of the Ultracast as we go forward and get more and more used to it, because it's incredibly flexible. Yeah. One of the great things actually for everybody who's players is when you, just roughly on the economics, if you try to do a mold for hard plastic, it's very high temperature, heavy pressure injection molding. So you're building a massive steel plate and you're using heavy technology to cut it very carefully. So it's thousands and thousands of pounds to make a mold. So you can't do anything that is only going to be relatively small volume. So unusual things that we'd all like to flesh out some of our games are very difficult to do in hard plastic. Ultracast, by comparison, is a sort of very clever version of spin casting. It's not quite spin casting, it's a very clever version of it with higher pressure, so it's in between. So with that, we can actually do some really interesting vehicles and really interesting extra stuff that you just couldn't do in hard plastic. So one thing we can do then is flesh it out with little interesting stuff that people otherwise couldn't get. So pick your unusual tank, which we'd all quite like to add to our kitty, which you couldn't possibly do in massive volume, but we'd all really like. You can do it in AutoCAD. Same with figures. So, you know, we can do some very interesting stuff done that way. British commandos with interesting equipment.
There you go. Well, and it brings up kind of leads into the next question too, where they were asking if you ever plan to do something unique with like Allied stowage and crew commanders and, you know, kind of extra little, you know, variants on bits and pieces that.
Yeah, that's exactly, it's a great question. So that's exactly the flexibility it gives us that we have in mind. The issue we have very simply that we're working through is it's become already very popular. People are really liking it. So now we've got to work our way to manage the capacity basically of both people and machinery. And that's a challenge that we've got to work our way through. So as we grow the capacity and we get more capable of doing these things, yes, we're definitely going to add things like that, like crew figures, sets of unusual figures, tank riders, you know, things that you couldn't normally do very easily, you can actually do in the UltraCast system relatively easily. So for instance, taking an ancient example, we can do some interesting things. Like we've just done the 100 years of English. Now, everybody will remember, even if you're a World War II player and have never touched it, ancients, you'll probably remember that the 100 Years' War English stuck stakes in the ground in front of them to protect themselves at the famous Battle of Agincourt. Well, we can actually produce little bits of terrain with stakes sticking up, and it's not too difficult to do a little stakes bag. Do one mold of stakes, and bang, we can knock out loads of ready-made stakes that are base-sized that players could buy and just do up, and they're ready to go for the army. And it's actually doable in UltraCast. Being possible to do that in any sort of other plastic.
Well, even if you're going to do it in hard plastic, I mean, hard plastic is so easy to break, whereas in UltraCast, it's not, and that durability is amazing.
I'll tell you, the UltraCast thing, one of the fantastic things I got, because we're working on the World War II, and I think I told you last time, but people probably don't remember if they a long time ago or just listening. I actually live in South Africa, so I moved from the UK down to Cape Town. Mm-hmm. So I work a lot remotely. So they sent me down the very first production models of the World War II tanks, which I got 2 weeks ago. And they are almost perfect as pre-production models. And there's a few little bits to work on that they're going to improve, but they're fabulous because you can click them together. I can make them so quickly. I mean, I'm a big fan of Pendraken. I've got loads of Pendraken stuff here. They're lovely stuff. But I could make these in 1/3 time in terms of putting together, and they all click in place. But the best bit that just amazed me is I had 3 Panzer IVHs with bent barrels, quite badly bent barrels. All the others were fine. So I thought, I'll just see what, I know heat is supposed to do something with them. So I think I'll video them and I'll try and bend them back under hot water. So I put them on a plate. I got some boiling hot water. I put my camera down for a second because I thought, well, I'll have to try and film them while I'm fiddling with them. And I tipped this boiling water on them. And by the time as I picked my phone up, I watched them and they straightened themselves. It was like magic. It was incredible. They just went, and they just went back to perfectly straight with pure mold memory before I could even get the camera up.
Oh, wow.
So I just looked at them and I just gradually put cool water in and let them cool down, pull them out, and they were perfect. Absolutely perfect. Which is just, that's fantastic. It's just superb. And actually, if I look in all my World War II 10 mil and 50, I've got lots of broken barrels from use. You know, so it's quite nice to have things like that. So yeah, they look fabulous. The detail on them is fabulous because we can actually make the molds from the STL prints. So you get a high quality 3D print. You can make it so you carry a lot of the detail into the mold, which is really nice as well. So I think they're going to be fabulous. They really are going to be lovely.
Very cool. Backtracking just a little bit, we got a question for about the 100 Years' War French and when they might be showing up. Any comments about that?
We've done the molds already, and yeah. they are on the list, and I think we're trying to keep them as a special surprise. But since you've asked,
oh,
I can't get anything past you, can I? Let me just have a very quick look. I think they are probably out in January. So yes, they are coming soon, and they've got all the mounted knights in, and the crossbowmen, and the Pavisier spearmen. So you're well covered. Don't worry. By the time you've got some longbowmen done, you'll have plenty of French knights and French infantry to go up against them. So there's nothing to worry about. They're coming out soon, and there are plenty of photographs of them painted on Facebook already, actually. They do look very good. The knights, again, it's really nice because you have lancers that are got some flex in them, so you don't break the lancers on the knights, which is really good. So that's basically the answer. And when it boots up, if I've made an error on that, I'll correct it for you. I'm just going to actually load up our launch plan so I can make sure I was accurate on that.
Well, it sounds like save up your Christmas funds and get ready to splurge in January.
Yeah, it should be good. Don't wait for me. Ask away. I can multitask.
Okay.
Although the ladies say us gents can't, we all know it's a lie.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to admit to it anyway. Other question that we have from the audience is, do we have any dates for 15 millimeter Far East World War II?
15 millimeter Far East World. Well, the thing that slowed us a little bit on that has been COVID, to be honest, because we're having them sculpt in the Far East, and the transport system has just been appalling because of it, which has been a bit difficult. So putting that aside, the sculpting of the Japanese is due to be finished for Christmas. So we should get those back, I would think, and master molded around the end of February and then March. So I would think probably something like April-ish for the 50 millimeter Japanese box, there or thereabouts. And I should get those on the shelf. So that'll be a full set of those out there at that point in time. There you go.
Sounds good. Yeah, I've got my my Pacific War battle group book all ready to go.
Yeah, I've got mine here. In fact, yeah, I was taking photographs by 10 Japanese and a US Marine Corps beach landing last week. It was very hot. I spent the whole week taking photographs. I think I've lost about 5 or 6 pounds. It was 35 degrees outside.
Oh my.
So we got
all the photography lights on as well, so it was 45 in my photographs in my workroom. Geez, that felt hot. I was feeling pretty exhausted after all of that. So, yeah.
Scott Roach wants to know if you're going to be doing. It's like almost like he's pleading, and I don't know why he really wants Australians in the Far East, but he wants to know if you can.
Well, I have to be honest, it's not one we've currently got on the list, but that doesn't mean we won't be doing it. So I see no reason why we wouldn't do it. It's a good idea. We just haven't got there yet.
So much to do.
Yeah, I mean that's the only issue we're going to have rolling forward is this stuff. This stuff has got such flex and such ability. In all honesty, we'd like to do them all. And there's no reason why we wouldn't do things like those. And there's no reason why we wouldn't do the Gurkhas or the British in Burma.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to do all of those. They're all on the hit list. So, I mean, that's one of my favorite periods is Burma. So, you know, I'd love to get some stuff on the table for those. So they're all on the to-do list. It's merely a matter of slotting everything in and working with the capacity to allow us to gradually do them. So yes, why not? Australians for sure. Yeah. But not scheduled right now. So take it as they will happen at some point, but they're not on the current sort of 6-month program that we've got laid out at the moment.
So Scott, we'll be able to do Kokoda one day, we promise.
I promise, yes, you will. Yeah.
One question I had, and it's when I tell you, hey, I've asked everybody else this question too. It's not because I lack good questions to ask, but with all the other companies coming out with new product, new lines in the middle of COVID, other than obviously production, but what other problems are you seeing of getting the word out? Because folks are home painting like fiends, but just trying to get them to look at some of these new games. Some other games I know I've worked on came out in February. That means nobody's played them in months. What are you guys seeing?
I think it's a really interesting world at the moment because we've got a sort of plus and a minus playing against each other, and it's difficult to judge which things it makes better and which things it makes more difficult. We certainly have the huge plus that people have a lot of time at home and are interested in stuff. So they've got time and interest. So we're seeing an awful lot of people playing things and testing things at home and writing little snippets about how they're finding the games with people and saying, look, I've tried this myself, it looks really interesting. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of painting. So we're all building up mountains of troops ready to try out on somebody when we're allowed to play again face to face. So there's going to be a bit of blitz to get stuff on the table, I suspect, when we can go face to face. But I think nothing spreads the word of a good thing better than social interaction face to face and playing games and the shows and the events. And clearly we've all been missing those. So I think when we all get together, the news of the things that are nice that people are enjoying will spread much quicker than it is currently, personally. So it's been a challenge, but I think it hasn't been too daunting a challenge. I mean, thank goodness we're in the world of modern technology. You know, heaven forbid this had happened 20 years ago before we had Zoom and Facebook and all these wonderful ways of sharing and connecting with each other, then it would have been extraordinarily difficult. The interest level has stayed very high. I have to say the interest level in terms of people buying and supporting us has been very high. So thank you all for that. It's much appreciated through a difficult time, and we can't complain at all. And I think we haven't. I suppose we have the benefit that Northag was a launch off the back of something that was well established, and Meg was launched off the back of something I'd sort of partially established for 3 years. So we weren't faced with launching something totally new. So there was a little bit of a legion of fans already out there to work on the back of. And that's probably helped us quite a bit with those two particular ones. I don't know, I don't have the experience of therefore launching something completely new into the marketplace, although the figures, it's fair to say, obviously are. But they are connected to it, and now they've settled down. They're going very well. So I think, you know, I think we've all done a good job of using technology to the best of its ability with a set of people in a leisure world who are doing more. But I think there's no question that once we get back to events and you guys are hosting events and we're all face to face again and we can chat about things around the table, it's going to be twice as good as we've had in the last 12 months. I'm sure of it.
So that first game that you got planned for when you can do it in person or an event, which one's it going to be? What rule set are you going to dive into? What's that ideal army that you're going to field?
Oh, for me, well, do you mean if it's more a demonstration game to people? I'll be diving into Divisions of Steel because I'll be launching the new World War II rules. So it'll be that for me, using these new 10mm, using these lovely 10mm tanks, and it'll be a Normandy game from around Com, with the 9th SS trying to bash the hell out of the British 1st Tyneside Scottish. So that'll be my first go. So it's lots of British infantry and 6-pounders dug in, being attacked by Panthers and Panzer Grenadiers. So, which is a little snippet of what's in the launch box set. Actually, there's the Divisions of Steel is going to be launched as the main box set of the game, but we're working on a get started little bargain box, if you like, which is going to have, I think we're probably going to settle on just doing a little tank battle and doing 3 Panthers against 8 Germans, and just giving you the bit of the rules that relates to armor, just to get people having an intro to the rules and an intro to the models, and do that at a very nice sort of bargain box intro to the games, and you can get some of those tanks and the basic dice and stuff in your hands for very little and have a go. So
yeah,
I'd probably reflect some of that actually. Yeah. I don't know. And after that, I need to get my 28mm War of the Roses army on the table because I spent 2 years getting it ready for a massive game down here last year and we had to cancel it. So, I have got to get that out because I've got like 80 bases of longbowmen up there that I've never been able to use, and 30 bases of men-at-arms, and somebody else has got the Yorkshire army. So we were supposed to be having a 12-player.
What scale is that army in?
It's 28mm, so it took me a while to do.
Oh yeah.
Where you'd have to buy another house. I'd have to buy another house just to store that somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's quite a lot of figures. Yeah, so I've never been able to use it after all that effort. So that needs to definitely get on the table for sure. We need to get that working.
Tom, what are you going to get out on the table first?
I think probably the very, very first game I'm gonna do is, and this is actually what I'm working on right now, is Northag. So I've been converting from playing in 15mm to 10mm. So I really, really, really want to get all that stuff out. So I've been printing up terrain like a madman and painting it up. Of course, I got a bunch of ultracast stuff that I've been picking up. So I almost have my British Army of the Rhine all done now, and that one I cannot wait for.
Wow, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be very. Which other bits of modern are you looking forward to? Which other armies do you particularly like?
Well, okay, yeah. So next, when you guys get into Centag, I really do want to pick up West Germans. That one I'm particularly looking for. Yeah. So get some Leos out on the table and all that kind of related hardware.
Are you guys going to be doing the Canadian 4th CMBG in Centec?
Ask Piers and Warwick on that one to double check. It was one we were kicking around a couple of weeks ago, and I can't exactly remember where they settled, but I think they settled on a yes. So double check with them in the following session.
Yeah. For those in the studio audience, just wait for 1 hour and 11 minutes, and we can answer that question.
You can have an accurate answer rather than my approximate chairman's answer, which could be slightly off. Yes, but it's good. We've got Warwick and Piers are currently putting together the list of armies and the list of kit that we need to go with it in due course. So that's live and being developed at the moment. So it's excellent, and that's going to be out in the course of next year. So basically what you've got is, call it Cente if you like, or call it the lists and equipment to allow you to play the rest of the Western Europe nations using the North Ag rules, which is effectively what it gives you all the core different armies to be able to use. So you've got the West Germans and the Dutch armies, all the various things that are in there, and a few Warsaw Pact ones to pick in as well. And it gives you plenty of flex in terms of what to play with. So it should be fun.
So here's an interesting thing that somebody just put into the chat room. It's not quite a question, but I think we can probably turn it into at least an interesting discussion. So they bring up 15mm Samurai using Meg.
Yeah. So there's several ways we can approach that. So if you mean let's start with the armies using Meg. So thank you for the question, first of all, because you've just landed on my all-time favorite bit of ancient history and ancient armies. So I'm a big feudal Japan fan, so much so I went to Japan and toured it for a while around all the battlefields and scenes. So if you're interested in samurai, then have a look at the list for the samurai that's online and on the Multiple Glorium website, because the Meg rules bring out a lot of the character of armies. That was my two fundamental design objectives with Multiple Glorium were historical feel and fun. And those people say have been ticked. And the historical feel of the samurai comes through very well because we've got characteristics that allow it to happen. But what's even nicer is when you go into the list, there are about 6 different eras of the samurai armies, which evolve in their character as they go through from the origins of horse and bow warfare, where they really were evolved from the Emishi, which were the northern Japanese horse archers. And they had to develop some opposition to that through to eventually the very late era, where they had sort of drilled armies built around samurai, and professional Ashigaru followers were no longer the case. They were actually professional retinue troops by then and started to become army with arquebuses. So you've actually got lots of different army designs in there, and they've all got their own character and they all feel very different. And yes, they do well. They're good armies in Meg, and indeed most armies are reasonably playable in Meg because the point system is very well balanced. But if you like Japanese history, you're bound to like playing samurai in Meg. And the classic eras probably is the Muromachi era, and that gives you the samurai with the followers. For people who don't know that era history, it was for a period very much like a samurai and his retinue following behind, and they would gang together. So in the big units, you tend to have the samurai in the front ranks with their followers behind, and it's represented explicitly that way. So it works very, very well. And to add one more twist to it, if you want to use samurai, then right now I'm sculpting some Lurkio metal samurai right now. So I've always had this mad dream that having bought so many samurai figures that maybe I should have a range of samurai figures, whether it succeeds or not, just as a matter of principle. So they're being sculpted, whether it costs me money or makes me, they're being sculpted in the Far East at the moment. So I will have some of those, and if those come out very nicely, then more than likely we will ultracast them as well at some point. So not only can you play samurai and enjoy playing samurai in Meg, you may be able to do ultracast samurai as well. So there you go.
All right. Well,
and look stunning. They just you get the Muromachi one when you start putting all the sashimonos in for the later periods. They look absolutely fabulous. So there's big banners on the backs.
Yeah.
You'll have seen some of the movies if you don't know the period very well. Although in reality, they're only in the late period. The early period of samurai, which many people represent in their armies, didn't have sashimono. They came in quite late, so the 1500s in the Meg. So earlier on, there weren't that many of them. They do look great. They look fabulous, and a fun army to play. So yes, whoever asked that question, go dig out your samurai. If you haven't got any samurai, go buy some samurai. And if you haven't yet played them in Meg, go dig out some samurai, paint it as a samurai, buy a copy of Meg and play them.
There you go. And directly related to that, also on Meg, how's things coming along with the Renaissance rules?
Yeah, they're looking very good. They're playing very well. In fact, I did a test game last week, a deliberate out of period one.
Yeah.
With bizarrely Samurai. Yeah, Samurai against the English Civil War, just to test it out of period and see how badly I could break it, but I couldn't. It worked. Yeah, the English invasion of Japan, 1647. Slightly weird experience, but it's a good thing to do when you're rule writing, to test what people will try and see if it works or not. So yeah, they're very close. Alistair, who's playing the lead on it, wants a little more time to refine it, which fits in with our program for putting things out. So he's going to run that through until about the middle of next year, and we will probably put them into print and have them out for the same London Grand Tournament, which will be the first reg event is set up for them. So that will probably be the formal launch event as well, and the first time people play it as a proper launched event, and the books will be out at that point in time. So yes, look out for it Q3 next year.
Fantastic.
And the cover is very nice. It's a blue cover with a round head helmet in the middle. So you remember the Meg cover being very symbolic. And
Right.
we're sticking to that format for every set of rules. So every set of rules has got a circular symbolic device in the middle and an old cover plan. So that one has got a nice symbolic round head helmet and a darkish bluish background. It looks very nice. So it'll sit nicely in the group. It's very nice.
Look good on the shelf or on the tabletop next to all the others, right?
Be good for both. And it starts with this and the Division of Steel. It starts that journey I think I mentioned last time, which is I really hope with the colour system, because it's common core, it will allow a lot of people, me included, because I like so many different periods, that you can move periods with more ease because part of the rules is common. And I have everything from ancient Egyptians through to modern, sitting in this room, sitting in here with God knows how many figures against, say, the whites in the next room. And then I've also got sci-fi and fantasy accents I look around as well. So, and I like them all. I'm all for integrating all forms of wargaming and bringing them together. My problem is I can't really keep more than 2 rule sets, maybe 3 in my head. I just can't. It's too much, not on top of everything else. But I can if they've got a common core.
Yeah.
The nice thing I'm trying to do with this is you should find it vastly easier to switch between Ancients and World War II and Renaissance and in due course Napoleonics, because the common core is there. So it helps you move between them. And so hopefully that aim will come true.
I always like asking people like you, or like really most of us, we're diehard gamers. So we all have the similar sad tale. But what was the game that got you into this? That when you started playing, you knew you were going to be a gamer for the rest of your life?
Yeah, okay. Well, it probably wasn't a game. It was probably an author, actually, going back. And then I'll come to the game. I mean, my wargaming journey started off with Airfix figures bought on mat when we were kids. Napoleonics, particularly my brother and I, we used to get them as a prize at the end of a month. If we'd done well, we got a box of Airfix figures each. And we realized that we could play a game. We set up 1,000 figures and we rolled marbles. One small marble per 20 inventory, and a big dobber, as we call it, or a king-size marble for a cannon. So we used to do that as kids. And my brother was much better at marbles than me, so he always won those games. So he thrashed me at that stage. And then I realized, having built a few tank models, it was this hobby called wargaming that somebody mentioned. So basically, I went down the local library and raided every book I could find on wargaming. So the person who got me into wargaming was Donald Featherstone, because I picked a load of books from there, and they had the whole of his 4-book series, Wargaming Through the Ages. And I devoured those forwards, backwards, and sideways, and sort of refused to take them back to the library for quite a long time at the age of 9 or 10. And then I found a simple set of rules to start to play in a magazine. And then and then probably my first real games that grabbed me when I started playing with other people, moving on from that, was Bruce Quarry. So he was a bit of a legend for me. So I played a lot of Napoleon's campaigns in miniatures and tank battles in miniatures. They were very popular with some friends in the area. So we had a good few years playing those as major rule sets. And Charles Grant, the original Charles Grant Sr., with his 100 Years War stuff, and Peter Gilder was quite local to us, if you know Peter Gilder by name, the original War Games Holiday Centre. he was actually quite local to us. He used to come to the club once in a while, so I went over and played a bit there in the early years of the Grand Manor. So I sort of got hooked through all of those in my early teens, basically. Was what drew me into the game. So it was Napoleonics and World War II that originally drew me into wargaming, and then I went into Ancients and WRG from there, having joined Burnley War Games Club and painted up my first 28mm Byzantine. There it began.
There it is.
There it is. And after that, yeah, was hooked on this fine hobby, and nothing really stopped from there. And then we tried all sorts of different stuff. But I've still got loads of my original stuff. Actually, I took some photographs of my original Heroics and Ross 1/300 scale for the Division of Steel rule this week, because it works really nicely in 6mm through to 15. So I took loads of pictures of those. It's rather nostalgic to get out, thanks to that painted probably 40 years ago, in the very early days, where myself and Mark Beddish played on his doorstep using rocks for cover, playing desert games while his dad came home from work to let us in.
Oh, the life of an addict.
Yeah, yeah, but at least we're happy addicts, you know. This is a good thing. You know? Yeah, it's all right, you know. We're addicted to the right type of stuff. This is quite soul fulfilling, isn't it? So, good for us, I think.
From what I hear, I heard heroin and stuff is cheaper.
It could well be looking around this room. Yeah.
On the other hand, you tend not to keep, stacks of it around that, is unpainted.
Yeah. It takes less space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's something very lovely about having done something for a long time, isn't it? I found when I sort of dig out boxes I haven't seen for a while, there's a lovely amount. I did give some stuff away recently, which is the first for me, because I've not sold very much over the years. I've always had a great attachment to things I've done, but the War Gamers here came to do. We've had a thing running called Megfest. We're doing the third of them in 2 weeks' time, just getting people playing around the globe on the same day. So we had 82 people last time playing in 9 countries. We've got another one coming up, and the people who came here, because they don't have too many 15mm Ancient Armies, I gave away about 8 of my old original 15mm Ancient Armies so they can all play. And it's rather nice, because I'm seeing all my old original figures being used every week now by friends. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
One question I always love asking developers: what period is undergamed, and why that should be gamed more?
That's a really interesting question.
We have to ask one per show.
Yeah, no. Well, no, you asked more than that, to be fair. But I think probably because it's such a big part of world history, yet is neglected because it's thought of as rather dull. World War One.
Oh, you're talking to the.
Okay, because World War One I always thought was really dull until I started reading the history of it, and this isn't dull at all. Actually, there's some really fascinating stuff about World War One.
Yeah. So I've worked on 4 World War I games, and coming out with another book 2. But yeah, I know. I'm actually going to agree with you, because a lot of people think it's nothing but trenches. And when I started working on Blood and Valor, I go, you have to include Africa, you have to include the Near East, and the stories. Yeah, but I agree with you.
There's so much fascinating stuff around the periphery, and even if you do the Western Eastern Front, you do the beginning and the end of the trench period. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So it really is just that middle 2.5 years of deadlock is potentially a bit dull, and even that you can make interesting. But it really is wrong to think of it as dull. It's got a bad brand image. It's actually much more.
Yeah, even in the trenches, there's a technology progression there that happened. That gaming that out is quite fascinating. It's
it is, and you start going to Turkey and the colonial bits, and it's actually very, very interesting, period. So I think that's a clear winner actually. The more I think about it.
Well, you're talking to 2 guys. Tom and I love gaming it.
Yeah, we're both World War I fans.
Well,
doubt.
Didn't know that at all. Look at that. There we go. Yeah.
So
fascinating. Yeah.
Jason did ask. He asked 2 questions, but I'll ask the last one first. Any chance PSC will do World War I? And well, you guys already have.
Yeah, we have in part. We've got some. Yeah, exactly. Did the Great War.
I have mine here. I don't have the tank I don't have the expansion yet, but I got your initial box. So they've already done it. And then he asked about expanding through 17th through 19th century and Russian Civil War. I suppose that you're talking about the 1920s.
Yeah, that would be Russian Civil War. So I'm guessing 17th through 19th century, maybe that would be more a Meg opportunity, perhaps.
Well, 17th to 19th century definitely is happening, full stop, because that's Gloire de Guerre, which is and then the stepping back from that, which is at core the Napoleonic rules, which steps back into the 7 Years' War and forward into the Crimean War. So that set is firmly in test at the moment and being worked on. So that will definitely happen, is the one that happens after the ones we've already talked about. So that will certainly happen, and certainly happen with another cast range of figures to go with it. So there's no question that that one is on the cards. World War One is something we've been chatting about, actually, being totally honest. I can't give you a yes answer because we haven't really decided or figured out where it goes, but it's certainly on our radar as something we think is worth looking at. And partly because we've already done some of it, so we know our way around it, and partly because we think it's much more interesting than people generally think. So we can make something of it. So yeah. So those are both possibles. We haven't thought at all about Russian Revolution, but it's not too big a stretch from starting to do the early 20th century anyway, is it? So once you start doing that, it's already quite interesting. And I think some other things that are interesting are once you've got the World War II stuff all running, is things like adding some of the bits of things like the Spanish Civil War.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Also a really interesting historical period. Actually, I spent quite a bit of time in Spain. It's got a fascinating history to it. And you start adding all the guerrilla style fighting that went on in that as well. That makes some really interesting gaming scenarios to work your way through the Spanish Civil Wars.
Yeah.
So the list of possibles is long. I mean, that's probably the theme of my message to everybody, is the list of definites that we've got on the card is already long enough. The list of possibles is very long indeed. So there's very little that's off the list at this stage. We will just have to be careful not to overwhelm ourselves with too many things to do. It's very easy with something that's a new technology to fritter away and do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this and a bit of that and end up not finishing enough. And that's the one thing we want to be careful about. We don't want to sort of under supply things that are already started, if you see what I mean, and leave people frustrated. Oh, well, you started doing this, there's not enough of it. It's an easy mistake to make. So we want to be careful not to do that, basically. And that's where we'll be trying to gear up the capacity so we can properly satisfy the players who are enjoying the games that are out there already or near to come before doing all the extra bits.
Yeah, so directly related to that, we've got a question from Nick about, here, I'll just go ahead and read it. So it says, whilst the 5 days to battle and train setup in Meg is excellent, would you consider writing a PDF of pickup scenarios, including a river crossing for ancients, medievals, club night games in the same way as there is for Divisions of Steel?
Yeah, well, the bottom line answer is yes. I should probably just banging on my door there. The answer is yes. My limitation is very simple. It's the number of hours in the day spent on gaming before I get shot. And I run a little close to it, so I have to dodge bullets already a bit at the moment. So, but the great thing I've got is I've got a fantastic community of helpers with Meg. That's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is there's a team, an inner team of 5 or 6 and an outer team of a good 40, 50 volunteers who all put time into it because they love it. And unlike the hopping, we've got a good community spirit. So I'll take that one away and park that in front of the community and see what we can do, because it would be fun to do a scenario book of games to make an interesting things. And I did start the process in that I've got 2 that I started myself, one of which is a night attack on a camp, which is quite fun to play, where you start up with all your troops deployed sort of in the tents, other than 2 units, 2 tugs that are scattered out on protection duty and sentry duty. That's quite entertaining. And the other one was an ambush, sort of a classic ambush of a Roman column going down the road, ambushed by Gauls. So it would be not too difficult to expand that, but not too difficult in hours. It actually still adds up to quite a bit. So I will take that away. I'll stick it on my job list and see if we can find somebody to pick that up and run with it, and I can sort of take a look at it and refine it, and we'll see if we can do that.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
One thing I've always noticed about Plastic Soldier Company and the community is, I see a lot of griping in a lot of communities, but with you guys, I don't really see that very much. You guys have a good relationship with your, with the gaming community, with the folks that are in there. They seem really motivated. How are you guys succeeding where other people just aren't?
I can't comment on others. I think there's a very strong philosophy of listening. I think when you chat on the next one, your Piers is a big listener and interactor in the way he's worked with the BG group. I'm a big listener and interactor. I've said to people, I see myself as if you like, the listening rule writer, in that I've taken a lot of feedback, and if I think something I've done isn't good enough, I'll tweak it. I won't hesitate to tweak it, so I don't over-defend things. I see all the inputs as good and welcome, and we've always done that on the forums, and we tend to react in a very sort of neutral, friendly way to people coming at us with ideas. So, and I think that's very healthy. I don't really see myself now, for instance, with Meg as being so much the rule writer, author, as being the original creator and now the facilitator, if you see what I mean. I mean, people are taking it and playing around with it and seeing new ideas. I'll gather them and I'll see what we can make of them going forward. That's it. So it's sort of a peg in the ground where and pick people to work. So perhaps it comes from that type of belief system and the way we tend to operate with people. I mean, you're right. We generally have a very nice relationship with people and a very sort of welcoming and nice set of interactions via all the social media, and it's nice to see. Long may it continue. At the end of the day, this whole thing is about community and fun, isn't it? I mean, there's
yeah.
That's why we're here, So may as well and keep it going,
But I would offer up a compliment, but it also is a bit of a question too, which is, one of the things I find about PSC games in general is things seem to be very well researched. When you're playing, it's like, okay, I really have the feel of, and then whatever that topical area is. So just, as a question, how much time do you end up having to put into research when you're putting, exactly, for, you're going to do something new in maybe, 17th century, or, I mean, you mentioned, you traveled over in Japan, how much time did you put in to,
A lot, but I think that the more important thing is these are all rule systems written by real enthusiasts.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take Warwick and Piers, and you sit and drink a beer with them, they're World War II junkies. So they have read so much and looked at so much and fiddled with so much over the years. It's ingrained in their DNA to be experts in World War II as much as you can as a studier of it and a reader of it as a layperson. So they are. And I'm the same, and Mark Bevis is the same. And we've immersed ourselves in the history for so long that we just know an awful lot, and we can draw on a lot off our bookshelves. But no question, I think we all set out with the idea that we want the rules to feel as good as possible. Now, there's no such thing as the set of the most realistic rules. I mean, at the end of the day, these are all games, so everybody's a slightly different philosophy. Everybody reads books and interprets them in different ways. But there are some things in that feel right and feel wrong when you've read a lot and you've understood a lot about how things tend to function, especially if you read a lot of the first-hand real reports of combat reports from the eras.
Right.
So we just set out saying, look, I want the game to have as good a historical feel as we can manage. And if we've ticked that box, we've done a good job. And if other people come back and say, okay, that felt right, that fit. If people have read a lot about the history and read a lot of books about World War II, played Division still and go, you know what, that felt about right for the Germans against the early Russians there. That felt about right. Then as long as they're saying they've had fun too, we've ticked the box. We've ticked the big box. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward philosophy. But fundamentally, they are written with people who already start with a lot of knowledge. Mark Bevis is writing there with me, been a friend since 13. He has spent hours and hours and hours trawling through stuff over the years because he's loved it. So he's compiled that, and that must be the biggest set of army lists in existence, possibly on the war games. What, 3,000-ish or something? It's a huge number on the micromark. There's the number there. And he's got all sorts of stuff that he's gathered over the years, interesting snippets, some of which we put in the book, things that I didn't know, and I'm reasonably well versed. Like we were playing around with the 6-pounder, and he came back to me and said, people don't realize there are actually 2 different 6-pounders. They only found out a few years ago. There are 2 different models, actually, of the British 6-pounder.
Mm-hmm.
with different barrel lengths, which is why there are two different performance figures, but nobody realised for decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating, you know. So it's mainly that they're written by history enthusiasts first, game designers second. I think that's fundamentally the reason. You know, rather than game designer first, trawling through history to find what they need to build a game, these are history enthusiasts who already have a lot of that history they're immersed in it, and then they go on and design a game because they're good at that too. That's it. So it's the order in which it's happened, probably, and that's a good thing. Yeah, because my interest comes from the history, for sure.
Do we have any more questions here? So yeah, they describe themselves as being rabid fans.
Rabid fans.
You know, I don't know if that's a compliment.
Probably. Yeah, we'll take that as a compliment. No, we'll take that as a compliment. Yeah.
Do you come into a room and there's teenage like screaming when that sort of rabid fan? I don't know.
I've never experienced that at a war game show ever, I must say.
Nobody swoons when you enter the room.
I think we've gone into the wrong career for that one. No, but it's really, I mean, writing a set of rules like Meg or Battle Group or Division of Steel, it's a labour of love. It really is a labour of love. So it really does make all the difference when people come back and say, these are really good, I'm really enjoying them, they have the right feel. I mean, it makes all the difference to all that effort when that happens. I mean, I never really get inspired by anything in terms of how many you've sold or anything. It doesn't make any difference to me. What really gets me excited is seeing people playing it and enjoying it and commenting on it and saying, look, I spent ages studying this particular campaign and I've been playing out using this and it really works because of this, this and this. And that's what always gives me a buzz. So the more there is of that, the better. I mean, that's the objective. And then it's just happy days. You know, if we've got happy players who are enjoying the game and enjoying the history, then everything's going to work out in the end, COVID or no COVID. You know? So
yeah.
It's going to be good. And working with PSC for me, you know, formally coming on board a year ago, it's been great. You know, we shared a similar philosophy before we started working together. I'd known Will for a good few years beforehand. It's a good combination because we share the same philosophy fundamentally about how to do things. So we will keep it going that way and keep bringing things out and keep pushing things forward and keep trying to raise the bar and keep trying to fuel people with all the right stuff to keep them entertained. Keep them entertained and happy, and please, as many as you can, come along to this PSC The Gathering. I mean, it could be just a wonderful thing to do every year, and we're going to try and make it an annual event. So come and help make the first one successful, and we'll have a fantastic time. And there are events just to run through. There's the big Meg event, the 50 mil World Championship, but there's also a Meg Pack 2 event where you just come along and play for fun. It's non-competitive. There'll be prizes for how nice the armies are. So paint up your best army and come along. There's a battle group effect. So we've got that event. There's a Northag event. They're both set up and ready to go. There's a Renaissance event. So that'll be set up and running. And then we've got a few fun things going on. So on the Friday night, we've got a come along and join in giant fantasy battle using the Meg Fantasy extension. So we're just going to mix up a bunch of people and do a giant smash, which should be fun. Should be a laugh. And I'm not playing in anything, so we'll have a demonstration game of Division of Steel with me and Mark there. And we've got my grab a squad and play 54 mil and shoot each other up thing running. And I think there's a few people already who volunteered to come on and put on giant Meg games and Division of Steel games. Somebody's talking about coming along and doing a demo game in 54 mil of Division of Steel just for fun. Somebody's thinking of bringing a 54 mil Tiger and putting it on a big table and a bunch of 54 mil infantry and having a Tiger hunt. So there's all sorts of little bits going on, but it should be a fabulous event. So if you're near enough to get there easily, don't miss out. And if you're far enough away that it's a bit difficult, at least give it some consideration because it could be a spectacular weekend.
Yeah, send us all the details so we can promo it at No Dice, No Glory.
Yeah,
but it sounds like a blast.
Yeah,
I would love to go back to England.
Yeah, well, it should be, and it's such a great location because it's just outside North London, so you can mix it with some fun time in London, and travel's easy.
Yeah.
No difficulty getting there, so it should be perfect. It should be really, really good. chance to meet everybody as well, because I think we're all going to be there. You know, I'll be there, Mark will be there, Will will be there, Dan will be there, Piers will be there, Warwick will be there. We're all going to be there, so it'd be a hoot.
Hey, Tom, I'll meet you at Heathrow.
It sounds like a plan. Take the tube
Yeah.
over.
I'll talk to my old landlord when I was stationed there. See if she can hook us up with a place.
Sounds like a winner. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Is there anything we haven't covered, guys? Or any other questions people have got that I can work through?
I have a million questions, but then again,
I've got plenty of time.
I always do. So, you know, you talked about your relationship with the community, and like I've said this before, war gamers are the worst, but then again, we're all war gamers. What are things about the development side of games that the community just doesn't understand? Some of the games that you've talked about, how many years did it take to develop them? I don't think they understand the time and the sweat equity, the labor of love that you guys go through. But,
No, possibly not. Well, I'll okay, well, let's take Meg, since that's the one that's out from me, because I can speak to that one with the most accuracy. So if we work backwards from when it was launched with PSC as a formal publication, so that was May of this year, or pre-sale in December. So go back 6 years before that date in total. And that's the date when I first came up with the idea of doing a color-based system. Essentially having the idea that I'd done 8 years before that, I'd launched a board game called Colors, and something I'd locked in my head that actually colors were really neat things for us to deal with as humans. They're very easily recognized for most of us. They're a very good memory jogger. So could I do something with war games using these colors? And I stored it away. And about 6 years ago, I started playing with it and said, look, maybe I could do a set of wargaming rules with color. And I started working on D6 and D10s and tried to find an odds profile that I really liked for ancient wargaming. And I'm quite good at stats and game theory and stuff in my background. Did a lot of that at university. So I did.
I'm an Orsa too.
Yeah, so I did loads of that, and I'd basically decided I don't really like the odds profile of D6s or D10s. Actually, it's quite interesting. So what I could also do with is a different odds profile. So can I create one? And I came up with the symbol idea and thought, well, if I have symbols, if I combine symbols with dice, can I create a different odds profile? So I created a system by the end of a year with 4 colors and the 3 symbols that are in Meg, because I quickly got to the skull and the half kill and S for special. So I quickly got to that. And then I have 4 colors. And I tried that for about a year, and it nearly worked, not quite. And then after one of the test things, I realized that I was 1 color missing and I needed 5. And I put 5 in, and suddenly it all fell into place. So that was about 5 years ago. Okay. And in the course of all that, then with a bunch of testers, I was working through a lot of the history to try and recheck how different troops did against each other in historical battles. So just to revise some of the theory on what certain troop types did against other troop types. So I created a sort of database of famous events which we could reasonably well bank on as being stability points, as I call them. I wanted the game to center on and say, well, if you run the game, it will hit those points in terms of its average outcomes, and then started picking a spread around that and seeing if I get it to work with the dice. So that took me about another 6 months while I was drafting, and then after another 6 months, I had it reasonably ready and some basic army lists, thanks to the work of Richard Jeffrey Cook and some others. And then I had to decide what to do with it. So I had to decide whether to publish it through somebody or do it myself, and whether to do the army list and points in a book or not. And I thought, well, actually, you can never get points right. It's impossible to get points right. That was a big experience of mine from running a lot of ancient competitions, running with other people's systems. So a mistake to put points in. When we did Fields of Glory, we put points in the book and they were clearly wrong after day 2. You couldn't change them. So, okay. So I decided I'd keep all those online and optimize them over time. And I then worked out how to do a production plan to publish them myself. So that was 2016. Did the pre-publication 2016. Didn't stop there. Then every year for 3 years, did some fairly sophisticated refinement. So this was now like a control system where the points and a few of the mechanics overshot a bit. So I graded them gradually and brought them back into line with where I wanted over 3 iterations. After 3 iterations, I basically declared them near perfect. And at that point, they're ready to go into hard print forever. And that's when Will approached me, as it happens. Sort of a coincidence that the timing was right. And I said, look, it's perfect timing, actually, because as far as I'm concerned, they're done in the next iteration. I have little more to add to Ultimate Glorium in terms of the rules. And they are there and published. So that is a 5-year journey to do that.
Yeah, people don't understand how much math has to do in the game. And, you know, I hear a lot of people that say that, well, they don't like a D6 in the game. And I explain why, you know, and I have a background like yours. I have an ORSA background. So I'm always looking at odds and statistics and, you know, about the collectively exhaustive, mutually exclusive CRT. That's kind of a heart and soul of a game that people just kind of forget.
Yeah, so with these, you know, I built little simulation models of what happens. You roll certain numbers of dice because it's an unusual dice, you know, and ran them all through, make sure you've got a profile that works, which is why the odds profiles are as good as they are. You know, you have to do all that really to make it work. And there's nothing wrong with D6, and as you know, it stats, if you roll enough of them, they even out very nicely, but in small numbers, they're pretty volatile. So, you know, it's and they only have 6 dice, so there's not that much of a spectrum to play with compared to a 10-sided dice. But a 10-sided dice is even more volatile in small quantities. You've got to deal with all that stuff, you know. So to get it right, so there's a fair bit of goes into it in terms of math and design. And of course, this one, of course, it's a new creation, so it's not using an existing set of dice. It's actually it's an interesting set of dice because it's got 2 things going on at once. It's got the 6-sided dice plus the different symbols going on. Of different tracks. So there's a few different things going on within it. So it's it's an interesting one to play around with in terms of its effects. But you can do it. You just have to simulate it. And like all good models, it has about 12 data points that I wanted to hit. So I've got 12 dots on a chart that I feel pretty confident about from history. I say I want the rules when I run them through to, on average, hit those 12 data points, and the variability to be about that. And that's what we get.
I would love to see that chart one day, but it's probably highly classified.
Oh, highly classified, yes. Pure CIMI 6-axis only, I'm afraid.
Oh man, yeah, I don't cut it. Yeah, because you know, other games I play that use D6, that the player will roll and they'll curse and scream. You know, if this was a D8 game, I'd hit more. I go, well, you really wouldn't. And you know, and explaining like, is it the 2-hit number? Or is it the dice, you know, because it's chaos of the dice. It's the 2-hit number that you really are talking about. No, it's not. It's the dice. I go, well, maybe you have dice that roll bad.
Yeah, or the other thing I think, which bites certain game systems very hard, is that, you know, there's a technology progression that's in there, and, you know, given the way the stats that, you know, that particular author may have chosen, it, you know, it doesn't have enough values represented such that you can really, you know, model that technology progression very well.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. And also, and it's a choice, you know, some people build things in, but you sometimes get hidden in there. It's not the bad luck of rolling a 1. It's the bad luck of when you roll it and the consequences of it.
Right.
So you know, very often people will feel the bad luck of that, but you have to, you know, see the consequences of it as well as it happening. So, you know, if rolling a 1 loses your commander-in-chief, which has now got a 1 in 6 chance of losing your entire army, you have a very volatile stat system. You know? Right. If rolling a 1 means you lose a base, which draws 1 unit down closer to collapsing, it's much more even. So,
yeah.
All this stuff you just have to figure out. You know, so basically, I put a lot of time into figuring that out, particularly because it was a new system.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, I mean, you still want to have some of those amazing events be able to happen in game, because then that is going to create some sort of situation that you'll be talking with your buds for the next 10 years about, just because of that one game and the way it went.
Absolutely. So we've kept those in. So in the system, exactly the S for shatter. So I have sat on the receiving end of a Roman line being hit by a long sequence of S shatters and skull shatters by gold disappearing. And you're right, that gives you the legendary moment that you talk about forever. And having a double red on the flank and managing to roll 2 S's as a 1 in 36 chance, which gives you absolutely nothing, because basically your troops stumbled over some terrain they hadn't seen. So that's fine. These things happen. You know, you're playing at a big scale. Anything can go wrong, can't it?
Yeah.
You're not going to have seen those things if there was a bit of a ditch in the way and it all fell apart. So things happen, you know?
Yeah.
things happen, love them more. So there you go. That's the reality of it. So it's fine. You want enough. It's the same. You want to gear enough volatility to keep it fun. And actually, the Meg system is geared that your good player versus your not so good player, inexperienced player. The good player will win on average, but they will take a lot of losses, which was part of my design principle, because it keeps it fun for everybody. So there are other games I play where the good player will thrash the less good player. So to me, it's like an analogy between if you play tennis or squash on a ladder, somebody doesn't have to be a lot better than you before you get pulverized. I mean, it really is a game where a small difference in standard and you're running around like crazy. Or snooker, it's another one that's a bit like that. You get crushed when they're a bit better than you. And I think in wargaming for fun, you don't want that. So I've geared Megs so that even if you play a total novice as an expert, they'll probably take 15-20% of your army down while you beat them, which is fun. And every now and then, if the luck goes their way, they'll give you a hell of a fright. As long as they do sensible things, which is, to me, right on target. What we want is a fun game. We don't want it to be sort of the good player just picks somebody apart and it's 3 hours of misery for the person, the other, and 3 hours of boredom for the good player.
We call it clubbing baby seals here, but it's not.
We don't get that in Meg. When you play Meg, you'll see that doesn't happen. The baby seal clubs you back to get a bit of revenge. So it makes the exercise all much more entertaining. Yeah. But that's deliberate. That's all part of the exercise, as you say, that goes into developing the rule, is managing those stats profiles and outcome profiles deliberately to get them to those sort of levels. They're not accidents.
Right. Yeah. A lot of math. And we promised our audience there would be no math today because it's frightening.
Well, hopefully we've kept it light maths. There you go. It's interesting. Interesting bit of math. We won't bother you with any of the heavy stuff. There's no need.
Yeah. There will not be a test later.
No, there will not. No, definitely not. But there you go. So there you go. 5-year journey. Quite a bit of maths. Major breakthrough points. Struggling through it, not working, but keeping faith that it will if you plug away long enough and find the thing that's going wrong. It's classic determined R&D.
Yeah. Let me see if we have any more questions here.
We did. We had one more pop up. So this is from Nick. He asks, any more thoughts on the hard copy Meg army lists?
Well, we can certainly do them. Probably we would do them as print on demand in due course. Compile them that way. And because having put 678 totally free, we have to be a little bit wary of how many people would want them. But we did start work on doing them print on demand. I've got something halfway through. So sometime next year, we'll do the first ones as print on demand. We want to get every list totally settled first before we do that. So I think the classical lists are ready to do that with next year. So then we can do them as a print on demand PDF. So you can have a nice softback or hardback PDF of all the classical lists in one go to take to bed and help you get to sleep.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, the other thing is, just for all of you who play Meg, we settle the point system so much now. It's working so perfectly that we can actually now print the points in the books as well. So I've nothing against printing them in the book in due course. My problem with it always is you can't get them right.
Yeah.
So once you've got them right, it's fine. So now they're right, they're settled. So we will, when we do them next year, we're going to actually put the points into the PDFs for the first time. So you can sit with a pen and paper for those of you who like scribbling and get an approximate list without using the army build.
Sounds good.
Well, I still have more questions, but nobody else. I have a ton. I always have a ton. Tom's like, this guy needs to shut up. I'm waiting for the message to pop up like, shut up. What is a mechanic you'd love to put in the game, but you just think gamers wouldn't go for it? One I can think of is, people don't understand when you play these games that you're seeing everything that's going on, and real warfare is not like that. So I know some, especially in naval gaming, which I do, they do a lot of the hidden movement, hidden orders. It never seems to work out. Is there anything that you've run across that kind of fits that bill?
Actually, you've just answered your own question for me.
Oh, okay.
So that is the one, and I know people don't generally get it, but we're having a go with Divisions of Steel. So the biggest, I think that's the biggest single thing, reading history and watching war gamers, is the all-seeing eye.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that 50,000-foot general that just
It's
sort of
amazing.
spoils.
It's
Yeah,
amazing what we know, and actually, if you look in the Meg book, we already have some fog of war rules in there, and they're fun to play. We use them here sometimes. So you deploy your army, and you tell them they're legionaries, but you don't tell them what grade they are. I mean, tell me, how on earth, as the opposing general, did you happen to know those were the exceptional ones? It's very impressive. That's really quite something. So you don't tell them, and you only declare it when they get into combat, and that's very entertaining. When you don't know which grade they are out of 4, because it makes a big difference. So things change a bit when you get that. You get less of the dilly and dallying because you really don't know what you're up against. And actually, I think a lot of battles won and lost were because A thought they were better than B, but A was wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas our rule book tells them they're not, so they would know better. So it's the fog of war, really, that I'd like to build in. And actually, when we played the World War II together, Mark and I, and do it properly, we use hidden deployment tiles for everything.
mm-hmm.
Because we like doing it. So everything is deployed. So in the rules, when Division of Steels come out, what you have is for every unit, which is a platoon or a troop, you have a small, medium, large category, which reflects its profile. So what you do is you deploy a hidden deployment tile, which on the top of that, you can see an SM or SM or an L, and that tells you the range at which you can force it to be revealed. But you don't know what's under it, and you don't know if it's a blank or not. So you've got that bluff effect. So all of a sudden, reconnaissance comes into play, because you need to use them to figure out what the enemy tiles are. Yeah. And the mystery comes into play. So you get the lovely version of the Fury thing in the film, where those 4 Shermans are trundling along and they come across a hidden tiger and the whole hell breaks loose. Yeah. And you get that in the game, because you sometimes feel you're going to bet on the L being a blank, and unfortunately no, it's not. It's a troop of tigers. That's the end of your Sherman company in one go, and you just learned a lesson of real warfare, which is sending a few jeeps and some recce troops up there would have been a really good idea. To find out first. So it is the fog of war, and in the standard rules, what we do is we don't use very many of them, just enough to create a bit of mystery. But we built that fog of war idea in a pretty easy, usable manner. So I hope when you see that, you'll see an attempt to do exactly what you're saying that does work. But we shall see. But it's lightweight in this standard set of rules. But Mark and I have used it full on, and it's fascinating, because you literally, in an attack defense game, you see nothing of the enemy. You see nothing.
Right.
You see all these hidden deployment tiles, and you know half of them are blanks. By which time you really don't know what you're up against or where. So you really now have to start to really think about how to be a bit more like a real general and be a bit cautious, and not go trundling forward in full knowledge of what's there, not plank your artillery on top of something because you know it's the most dangerous thing they've got, because you don't know. So now you're guessing, and you're going to have to batter a few pieces of terrain and hope it quiets that bit of terrain down, but could well have nothing in it. Yeah? Could be a complete waste. Yeah. And you start using smoke, because you don't get that close to these hidden deployment tiles with full visibility. So all these real things start to cut in that you can get lazy at, because you actually know where everything is. So that's the one, definitely. And even in Ancients, it's the one, which is why I have this thing about you don't tell your opponents what they actually really are. In fact, I used to try one in Napoleonics, which is very good fun. We used to have some card system in Napoleonics where you deploy your troops, and behind them you put some cards with swaps on them, location swaps for equivalent. So cavalry could swap with cavalry, guns with guns, infantry with infantry. And when they came within, I can't remember, 400 meters or something for cavalry, you swap them for the real ones. So if you imagine you'd have your hussars wandering forward, your British hussars, and once you get 400 meters, you now know they're not just cavalry. You switch them with the heavy dragoons on the other side.
Yeah, yeah.
And you say these are really the heavy dragoons. And at that point, you know what they really are. And that used to be really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Or surprise, these fellows have caress on them. You know.
All that kind of stuff. Or in World War II terms, the classic wonderful one of those things that look like Panzer IVHs on the hill were in fact Tiger Ones, or in fact Tiger Ones. You just realise because you just load up at long range. So,
yeah.
You know, and history's full of great examples, like first day of Battle of Gettysburg. That's not militia. That's the Army of the Potomac.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
The whole war could have changed. So I was on a... Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
No, I think there are all sorts of fantastic examples all over the place of things like that, and people getting caught out and not really realizing, what they're up against. And it just makes a fantastic recreational game. I mean, it's more difficult for a short time frame club night or a short time frame competition game, obviously. And in that sense, it doesn't matter for those in a way if you have the all-seeing eye. It's a different type of game, and I like both types of games. But for playing a campaign or trying to reenact a more historical feel of a game through an afternoon together, I highly recommend it. It really does bring things to life in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on a panel recently, and one of the questions I was asked was like about, what's the next big innovation for games? And I think I talked about it yesterday, but I said, there's something that all of us carry around that has an amazing computing power, but we tend not to use it for some of our games other than list making. Do you think using things that historically we haven't seen in gaming, such as the use of tablets, the use of smartphones, could one day augment miniatures gaming?
Yeah, I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming. I mean, it takes development by people much bigger than us to get that sort of stuff going.
Yeah.
So as it emerges and becomes usable, I think we definitely investigate it and see what we can do. But I'm absolutely sure that that sort of stuff is coming and will supplement some of the things we can do in a nice way.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll ever take over from our love of tactile stuff.
It better not.
No, but I mean, some of the things that you can do with, something like this. I mean, and we're just on the cusp of it is, where it can, put like an overlay over the top of what would be your physical, game table. So, if you wanted to get rid of, some of the clutter of chits and things like that, or things that are unknown, you could potentially, represent that in, sort of a virtual form in on a phone that, you sort of scan the battlefield. It's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a chit, something over there, or there's something over there, and, kind of make that, add into the experience. But again, there's some work ahead in order to make that viable.
And as things get cheaper and cheaper, I mean, it can't be that long till we can have a 6x4 TV screen where we can dial up a Gettysburg floor plan, and it'll just put it there for us. And that's going to be kind of cool just to push figures around anyway. So how cool will that be? There's all sorts of possibilities, and then the quality of the artwork, everything is going. Well, and even little things. I've already built an app. I haven't done anything with it to roll the meg dice. It's kind of fun. I can just sit here and tap 2 reds and press a button, and it rolls 2 reds for me. Yeah. Even that's quite nice.
Yeah, there's that. But, I think that the other thing, at least to me, this is sort of unexplored in the industry, is, gamers like to tell the story of the game that they played. Mm-hmm. And there really isn't much of an aid yet that, while you can take pictures, you want to augment that with experience, and, okay, this is, what I, was tactically thinking, and that isn't really there in the technology. And I think that's a, sort of a downside, is being able to replay the experience for others to see as well.
That's a great idea, isn't it? Like an AAR app or something, isn't it? Where there was a way of, it was ready set up for you to load it and fill in all the templated bits for a really nice AR.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be very cool, actually. Yeah, and would be universal for any rule set if you do that as well. So it's really nice overall. That'd be very cool, actually.
That'd be great, because then we get more AAR articles that aren't boring.
Yeah, that's true. And you could scrub through. You could fast forward. Okay, let's go a couple of turns in, and be able to do that in a couple taps.
Got some lovely automatic stuff like the time-lapse photography of the thing as well. If you had it done, load your top-down shots, so you could actually press it, and it would actually just take you through. So you do a video of every shot with a 5-second lag on each, so you could just get a blast of how the things evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool, actually. That's an idea.
Hello, everyone. I don't know how much I'd like instant critique of my loss.
I'm just jumping in to say hello and to join you for a bit. I'm really sorry, chaps. I had it in my diary for next weekend, which was helpful. And it's my daughter's 18th birthday today, so so I'm struggling. I'm spinning plates here frantically, but I thought
don't worry, Will. I got here nearly in time. As it happened, I don't think we got the invite through as well. I didn't get an invite through, so I don't think you got a reminder. So I've just pressed on, and we've had a good natter. So anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm here now, so you can fire things at me for a bit.
Yeah. Hey, well, look, we're having a good conversation. We may still be recording until next week, so don't worry about it.
I hope not.
Now we get the fun bit is you can ask Will the same question you ask me, you get a totally different answer. It'll be very funny.
Yeah. We'll see if he spoils the same things that you did. I mean,
like that terrible old game show, isn't it? Mr. and Mrs.
Mr. and Mrs.
What colour the toothbrush is. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there we go. So what do we got left there, guys? Any more questions? You still had a list running.
Oh, I have a huge list, but I'm going to try to pull out spoilers from Wilt that now that he's here, but we're going to have you guys on again to answer all these questions. But
we'd be very happy.
I'm sure we could do that. Be delighted.
Yeah.
Articles about your guys' stuff. Really, we get a lot of hits on it. And just looking around, like who else is covering you guys? We're fortunate that we have a lot of guys that love your games. And I know when you and I started talking for the one in February, you have a lot of guys named Simon, so it could be the wrong Simon. Like, I'm not an Ancients guy. I still watch that presentation. I may get into Meg one day, but totally. It's like we have a staff that loves these games, and it's infectious because not an Ancients guy, but if it's a sound rule system, I'll play it because once again, I have an addiction problem.
You'll be an Ancients player before you know it.
It will happen.
We'll get you addicted at Historicon next year. Don't worry. We'll give you your first fix, and then you'll be on.
I'll be there.
We're
First
very
one's free.
Don't worry. Yeah, well, actually, that's going to be a fabulous event next year. Well, I was telling them about the LGT. I think a whole bunch of these guys are going to try and come over and pay us a visit. I said, since we're
wonderful.
going to Historicon, they need to come over and pay us a visit at the first
Absolutely.
Gathering.
Two-way street.
Yeah.
We would be delighted to have you. Yes.
It's going to be an absolute winner. Another one they were mentioning, just so you can fill in, I don't know quite where we got to, but I said we pondered it recently. I didn't go any further than that, so you don't. They asked me which period of history I thought was underrated unfairly for wargaming, and I said I thought World War I had got an unfair poor brand, and actually was a damn sight more interesting than people gave it credit for. Turns out these two chaps are big World War I fans, so I did say we have been pondering World War I a little recently, haven't we?
Yes, it seems to be growing in popularity, rightly so. Maybe as we've moved out of living memory, I think that probably has helped the slight squeamishness I think that there's always been around World War I, together with the the sort of feeling that it's a very boring trench mud fight, grinding. There's not a lot there to take out of the trenches. But actually, yes, Si's right. There's a lot of interesting stuff. If you look at the 1914 and the 1918, I'm a big fan of that sort of 100 days and what I call the birth of Blitzkrieg. And I think that's it's very interesting. And the advances between 1914 and the chasseurs and the heavy cavalry having a trot around in their breastplates still and uhlans to 4 years later, and that the sort of combined arms thing. There's a lot there. I think Si's right. I think it is if not the most underrated and underplayed period. It's certainly up there, and I think certainly Si, me, and the team have talked about perhaps other tabletop rule sets that we can do. We could do some of Simon's CCC battle group. We've talked about that as well. And we have our Great War board game, the Richard Borg Memoir 44. Good. That's fantastic. And we still plan some further expansions there. I did want to call it Memoir 14, but I was kind of shot down on that one, so we couldn't call it Memoir 14, unfortunately. But a fantastic, starter and good primer, I would say, and a good sort of starting place for those guys who want to learn more about World War One and the tactics and how it played out and stuff. Yeah. In fact, we are, I think, not to be confirmed, but potentially the next expansion will be a sort of a 1918 over there, sort of based around the US, sort of entry into the war.
Oh, they showed up late. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm being tactful. I'm trying to be polite.
They
And
should-
we'd build that 100 days by the Blitzkrieg 1918 thing around the Doughboys arriving. So because we know that there's we have a very strong US market, and of course Mr. Borg is one of your numbers, so he's quite keen to build that 1918 expansion around.
That man has never created a bad game.
He hasn't. He hasn't.
Yeah, I'm waiting because I have a ton of them, and I'm
Good.
waiting for a bad one.
When we did when we did the Red Alert Space Fleet Warfare version of Command Colors, and it always sort of stays in my mind. It sticks. There was some guy made a comment about, oh, Mr. Borg is in danger of turning into a one-trick pony, but what a racehorse of a pony.
Good.
And I thought that just sort of sums it up. He's so good. He just nails it.
He does, and I think he was at Historicon last year, and I love his games. I have his Napoleonics. I have the game that he did with you guys. And people are like, I don't like the cards. Oh, and the American Revolution game is fantastic, and it plays tactically different than the Napoleonics. And people are like, I don't like the cards because I don't want the game to tell me what to do. Oh yeah, because if you were a real Napoleonic general, you'd be able to do whatever you wanted to do when you wanted to do it.
Quite.
And he's like, well, yeah. I go, it doesn't work like that. And it's slick how that mechanic puts in the fog of war and your command and control.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I know there are some guys out there that just don't like card systems, like some guys who play board games don't like dice systems. That's fine. So I think there are certain guys that will never be able to enjoy card play in a war game, in a game, and that's fine. But it is such an elegant system. And it's so easy to learn, but the hidden layers there, the depth, and the fact that each genre, each period, he crafts and he just makes it just right, seemingly with a few tweaks, but there's a lot of thought I know goes into it and playtesting with his group down in Florida. But he's just he's a god, is our Mr. Borg.
He is. Well, I have to go open up the room for the next chat, which all you guys are welcome to. If you want to keep talking, we could send you the sign-on info for that. But I'm going to go open it up and get ready for the next two guys. But I want to, Tom's going to finish out here, but I want to thank you guys on behalf of No Dice for the Glory and HMGS. This was fascinating. It left me wanting more. I don't think the next 2 hours are going to do it, so we're going to have you guys back sometime.
Oh, it'd be a pleasure. Anytime.
We would be delighted, as I say. I'm sorry again about being late and my diary all messed up. So I will definitely have to come and talk to you guys again.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for being here, though.
Those guys.
Really appreciate it. So it has been a fascinating almost 2 hours. So I think, gentlemen, we should call it a wrap again. Thanks to you, Simon. Thanks for you, Will, for being here. I appreciate all the things that you guys got coming in the pipeline, and a lot of exciting things coming from PSC. So
cool.
Looking forward to it. Alrighty, guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
There we go.